that my wife was cheating on me, I agreed to sleep in separate rooms. For the next 3 months, I quietly gathered every piece of evidence I needed. When I was finally certain of the truth, I walked into my wife's bedroom once again. The moment I entered, she quickly locked her phone and turned her back toward me. "I'm tired," she said coldly. "I want to sleep." Ignoring her attitude, I sat down on the edge of the bed. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about." She sounded completely impatient. "Isn't this just about that?" "I've already told you. If you have needs, go find another woman. I just don't want you touching me." Hearing those words, I remained calm. If I'm supposed to find another woman, then what's the point of having a wife? Do you help support this family financially? Do you give me emotional support? I handle every responsibility at home. If I have to look elsewhere for companionship, then what exactly do I need you for? She immediately turned around and glared at me. "What are you trying to say? You want a divorce?" She sat upright, disbelief written all over her face. "Dongming Liang, just because I won't sleep with you, you're divorcing me? You say I don't contribute financially. You say I don't give you emotional support. But who gave birth to our child? Did the child fall from the sky?" I looked straight into her eyes. "If we're talking about the child, shouldn't you ask the child's real father? Because it certainly isn't me." Her expression instantly changed. "Dongming Liang, you bastard." She grabbed a pillow and threw it at me. "You're insulting me." I calmly caught the pillow and looked at her. We're both adults. We're responsible for the choices we make. Do you really think I'd accuse myself of wearing a green hat without any proof? Fine. If you have evidence, show it to me. As long as you can prove what you're saying, I'll agree to the divorce. Without saying another word, I threw a DNA test report onto the bed. "Open your eyes. Read it carefully." She stared at the report in complete shock. Then she suddenly looked back at me. "You secretly took our child for a DNA test? You don't trust me at all?" I looked at her without the slightest emotion. "Go wash your face. Calm down. Then come back after you've figured out how to speak like a reasonable person. What you just said doesn't even make sense." She clenched the report tightly in her hands. "If you never trusted me, then this marriage really can't continue." Instead of denying the test results, she angrily began packing her belongings. 15 minutes later, she slammed the front door behind her and left. This wasn't the first time she'd walked out after an argument. Sometimes she'd disappear for a day, sometimes 2 or 3. She would block every way of contacting her and leave me worrying until she finally decided to come home. To keep this family together, I'd spent years being careful with every word I said. I constantly worried about upsetting her. Even our relationship as husband and wife, I had always been the one making compromises. But this time, the moment she walked out the door, I blocked every one of her phone numbers and social media accounts. I deleted every contact. There was no reason to chase after her anymore. The only question now was, would she return first to sign the divorce papers, or would the court summons for our divorce lawsuit reach her before she came back? Not long after she left, I woke the child. I knew none of this was the child's fault, but after learning the truth, I couldn't bring myself to look at the child the same way. There was no way I could continue pretending nothing had happened, or keep raising another man's child as if it were my own. Trying my best to stay calm, I made up a simple excuse, then drove the child to my mother-in-law's house in the middle of the night. As soon as she opened the door, she looked confused. "Ming Liang, the child has school tomorrow. Why are you bringing them here so late?" Without saying a single word, I placed the DNA test report into her hands. That night, no one in my wife's family would be getting any sleep. The next morning, when I walked into the kitchen, I froze for a moment. My wife was actually cooking breakfast. We had been married for 7 years. This was the first time I had ever seen her cook. As she carried the food to the dining table, it was obvious this wasn't her first time in the kitchen. The dishes looked delicious. Everything was cooked perfectly. The only thing I couldn't stop wondering was, who had she learned to cook for? She sat quietly at the table, waiting for me. But instead of taking a seat, I finished washing up and placed a divorce agreement in front of her. She immediately grabbed my hand. "Honey, aren't you going to ask where I went last night?" I looked at her calmly. "I only care about the whereabouts of the woman I love. And you're not her." The moment those words left my mouth, tears rolled down her cheeks. She cried silently, looking pitiful enough to break anyone's heart. Once upon a time, that expression would have softened me, but now, I felt absolutely nothing. She looked at me with trembling eyes. "Do we really have to get divorced?" Last night, I went to my parents' house. I came home in the middle of the night. My dad already suspected we had an argument. He almost had a heart attack. If he finds out we're getting divorced, his body won't be able to handle it. I answered without hesitation. What does that have to do with me? She stared at me in disbelief. How can you be so heartless, even now? She was still trying to act innocent. I decided it was time to expose another lie. Didn't you notice something? The child isn't home. She looked confused. What do you mean? I took the child to your parents' house last night. Didn't you see them? Her face instantly froze. She opened her mouth but couldn't find the words. Finally, she spoke in a weak voice. I didn't know how to explain everything to my family, but my father's health is really bad. I couldn't let him know in the middle of the night. Then she suddenly became angry. You knew he wasn't well, so why would you take the child there so late? I couldn't help laughing. Think before you speak. You're the one who cheated. If you hadn't cheated, I would never have taken the child to your parents' house. You're the reason your father will be upset. Do you honestly think he would accept what you've done? Tears streamed down her face. I didn't cheat! You can't falsely accuse me. I looked straight into her eyes. Whether you cheated or not, you know the truth better than anyone. I'm giving you 3 days. If you agree to a divorce, we'll settle it peacefully. If you refuse, I'll file a lawsuit. And one more thing. Pack your belongings today. Move out. I feel sick every time I look at you. Ignoring her cries, I turned around and walked out of the house. Today, I had something much more important to do. The man who had destroyed my marriage, Kui Shujie, a graduate who had studied overseas, planning director of Xingyu Media Group, the man who had been having an affair with my wife. Today, it was time for us to finally meet face to face. Neither of them deserved to walk away without consequences. Meeting someone like Kui Shujie wasn't easy. Normally, you had to make an appointment weeks in advance. When I arrived at the company's reception desk, I simply gave the receptionist my name and asked her to contact him. To my surprise, the moment he heard my name, he agreed to meet me immediately. A few minutes later, I stepped into his office. The room was decorated with expensive furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the busiest part of the city. Sitting behind a massive executive desk, Kui Shujie looked every bit like a successful businessman. But as I stared at him, the only image that came to my mind was him standing beside my wife. A cold smile slowly appeared on my face. The real confrontation was finally about to begin. The moment I walked into the office, Kui Shujie slowly stood up from behind his desk. He looked at me with a faint smile, as if he had already guessed why I was there. So, you're Deng Mingliang. His tone was calm and confident. I've heard a lot about you. I walked over and sat down across from him without asking for permission. I've heard plenty about you too. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. The office fell completely silent. Finally, he broke the silence. So, what brings you here today? I looked him straight in the eyes. You know exactly why I'm here. You've been seeing my wife. His smile froze for only a brief moment before returning. I think you've misunderstood something. I have many female friends. If your wife happens to be one of them, that doesn't prove anything. I let out a cold laugh. I didn't come here to hear excuses. I came because I wanted to see what kind of man would destroy someone else's family. His expression gradually became serious. Mr. Deng, we're all adults. If a woman chooses someone else, maybe you should ask yourself why. The words hit like a knife. He wasn't denying the affair. Instead, he was blaming me. I leaned forward slightly. So you're admitting it? He calmly picked up the coffee on his desk and took a sip. I didn't admit anything. But relationships are never one person's responsibility. If your marriage was truly happy, no outsider could have stepped in. I stared at him for several seconds. Then I slowly smiled. Interesting. You sound very experienced. He placed the coffee cup back on the table. I simply understand human nature better than most people. I nodded. Then let me tell you something. My marriage is ending. But don't think that means you'll have a happy ending. The smile on his face slowly disappeared. What exactly do you mean? I calmly took a folder from my briefcase and placed it on his desk. Inside were photographs, phone records, hotel check-in information, and every piece of evidence I had spent 3 months collecting. I gently pushed the folder toward him. Take a good look. As the planning director of Xingyu Media Group, I'm sure you understand what would happen if these documents became public. For the first time, the confidence in Kui Shujie's eyes disappeared. His face became noticeably darker as he opened the folder. He flipped through the pages one by one. The more he read, the uglier his expression became. After a long silence, he slowly closed the folder. "What do you want?" I looked at him without any emotion. "I don't want your money. I don't want your apology. I just wanted you to know, actions have consequences. You and my wife made your choices. Now it's time to pay the price." The office fell silent once again. Neither of us spoke another word. I stood up from my chair. Without looking back, I walked toward the office door. As I reached the entrance, I stopped for a moment. Then I spoke one final sentence. "From today onward, pray that we never meet again." With that, I opened the door and walked out, leaving Kui Shujie sitting alone in his luxurious office, staring silently at the evidence spread across his desk. The office door closed behind me. Before I had even reached the elevator, my phone rang. It was Kui Shuji. His voice was completely different from before. The arrogance and confidence were gone. "Dung, brother Dung, can we talk?" I stopped walking but didn't say a word. He continued nervously. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have gotten involved with your wife. I shouldn't have crossed the line. Please, tell me what you want. As long as it's within my power, I'll make it right." I let out a faint laugh. "Now you're willing to talk? A few minutes ago, weren't you telling me that adults should take responsibility for their own choices?" He fell silent. After several seconds, he finally spoke again. "I deserve whatever punishment you give me. But please, don't let those videos get out." I calmly replied, "Meet me tomorrow. Then we'll talk." Without waiting for an answer, I hung up. The next day, Kui Shuji arrived early. Unlike yesterday, he no longer looked like a successful executive. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. It was obvious he hadn't slept all night. The moment he saw me, he stood up immediately. "Brother Dung." I ignored his greeting and sat down. He cautiously pushed a cup of tea toward me. "Please, have some tea." I didn't touch it. Instead, I took out a USB drive and placed it on the table. "Watch it." His face instantly turned pale. With trembling hands, he plugged the USB drive into his laptop. I calmly looked at the teacup in front of me. Without waiting for me to speak, Kui Shuji quickly stood up, poured me some fresh tea, and respectfully handed it over with both hands. His attitude was nothing like yesterday. It was as if he had become a completely different person. I couldn't help smiling. I've been reading a lot of CEO novels lately. I'm not some overpowered billionaire, but today, I'd like to know what it feels like to have someone kneel before me. The smile on Kui Shujie's face disappeared. His expression became incredibly ugly. He struggled internally for several seconds. Then, very slowly, he bent both knees and knelt on the floor. The moment he knelt down, I could clearly see the humiliation and unwillingness in his eyes. But I felt no sympathy, not even a little. I stood up and walked over to him. Without hesitation, I slapped him across the face. Smack! Then another. Smack! Left, right, left, right. Several loud slaps echoed through the office. His face quickly became swollen. I looked down at him. "Director Kui? Is hitting someone against the law?" Forcing a smile through the pain, he lowered his head. "If someone else hit me, it would be illegal. But if it's you, Brother Deng, I deserve it." "You're only teaching me a lesson." I gave a faint smile. "You know how to talk. In that case, you've earned a few more." Smack, smack. I slapped him several more times. This time, he didn't even try to dodge. When I finally stopped, both sides of his face were bright red. His lips had begun to split. I returned to my seat. "Now, let's talk business." I checked He Ying's bank records. Over the past few years, she transferred you a total of 1.06 million yuan. Is that correct? Kui Shujie lowered his head. "Yes, the amount is correct." I nodded. "I won't charge much interest. Let's round it up. Transfer me 1.2 million yuan. Any objections?" Without thinking, he answered immediately. "No, none at all. When will the money arrive?" 3 days. At most, 3 days. I couldn't help laughing. "I almost don't feel like hitting you anymore, but I've already started, so let's finish properly." Smack, smack. A few more slaps landed on his swollen face. Only then did I stand up. As I walked toward the door, he hurriedly spoke. "Brother Deng, the videos, I didn't even turn around. That depends on your future behavior." After saying that, I walked out of Xingyu Media Group. The moment I stepped outside, I let out a long breath. Everything that belonged to me, I would take back. Not a single thing would be left behind. After leaving Kui Shujie behind, I drove straight to work. The anger I needed to feel, I had already felt the day I discovered the child wasn't mine. Now, I wasn't interested in revenge alone. I wanted to recover every loss. I wanted my life back. As for He Ying, she was already part of my past. But when I got home after work that evening, I was surprised. He Ying was still there. Not only that, both of my parents, and both of her parents, were sitting together around a large dining table. The table was filled with delicious food. 2 expensive bottles of liquor sat in the middle. He Ying's eyes were swollen and red. It was obvious she had cried for a long time. The moment she saw me, she quickly walked over. "Ming Liang, we've all been waiting for you." She reached out, trying to help me take off my coat. I immediately stepped aside. I didn't even want her touching me. It was obvious. She had invited both families here. I became curious. What kind of performance was she planning this time? I walked over and greeted both sets of parents before taking my seat. He Ying quickly sat beside me. She picked up a piece of braised pork intestine, my favorite dish, and placed it into my bowl. "Try it," she said softly. The next second, I grabbed the bowl and threw it onto the floor. Crash! The sound of the bowl shattering instantly silenced the room. The atmosphere became unbearably tense. My father glared at me. "That's enough!" Before I could speak, He Ying hurriedly wiped away her tears. "Dad, it's my fault. Don't blame Ming Liang. It's all my fault," she cried as if she had suffered an unbearable injustice. My mother looked at me and sighed. "Ming Liang, Xiaoying already told us everything. This really isn't entirely her fault. We understand you're angry, but she's the victim. You're her husband. You should be more understanding." I frowned. "The victim?" I turned to He Ying. "I'm a little confused. What exactly did you tell them?" My mother looked at He Ying. "Didn't you tell Ming Liang yet?" He Ying lowered her head. I don't know how to say it." My mother gently patted her shoulder. "Don't be afraid. Your father and I know you're a good girl. If you can't say it, I'll explain." She looked at me seriously. "Ming Liang, the child really isn't yours, but none of this was intentional. The year you two got married, her classmates attended the wedding. Afterward, they all went out together. One of the men deliberately got her drunk. Then, he assaulted her. She had just married you. She was terrified. She didn't dare tell anyone. No one expected she'd become pregnant." As my mother spoke, her face grew increasingly complicated. It was obvious she didn't like this explanation either. No one wants something like this to happen. She kept it from you because she was scared. That's understandable. I slowly turned toward He Ying. She couldn't even meet my eyes. Her tears flowed even faster. "I'm sorry. I was so afraid. I thought if I told you, you'd divorce me." I stared at her coldly. "Who was that man?" The room instantly fell silent. Both families looked toward He Ying. I repeated myself. "I have the right to know. If someone really did this to you, I have the ability to make him pay." My mother-in-law quickly nodded. "Xiaoying, Ming Liang knows a lot of people now. If you tell him who it was, he might actually be able to get justice for you." He Ying hesitated. I, she cried harder and harder. I narrowed my eyes. "You won't say his name, because you're trying to protect him." My father suddenly slammed the table. "Ming Liang, watch your mouth. If she doesn't want to remember that painful experience, that's perfectly understandable." My mother quickly tried to calm everyone down. "Let's eat first. When Xiaoying is ready, she can tell us later." I didn't argue. Instead, I quietly took out my phone. I dialed a number. As soon as the call connected, I spoke calmly. "Kui Shuji, come to my house. I don't need to give you the address, do I?" Then I hung up. If He Ying wanted to keep acting, I'd let her continue. Once Kui Shuji arrived, I'd like to see how she planned to keep this lie alive. She wanted both families gathered together? Fine. Today, everyone would finally learn the truth. The dining table remained silent. My father occasionally glanced at me but said nothing. My mother forced herself to keep the conversation going with meaningless small talk. He Ying lowered her head the entire time. She barely touched her food. She only kept wiping away tears. About 30 minutes later, the front door opened. Kui Shuji walked inside. The moment he saw me, he froze. Because he was so nervous. He had forgotten to ring the doorbell and entered using the password. Forcing an awkward smile, he held up several expensive gifts. "Brother Deng, a friend brought me some premium Wuye mountain tea. I thought I'd bring you some to try." He placed the tea, cigarettes, and liquor onto the table. I pulled out a chair. "Sit!" He cautiously sat down. Only the edge of the chair supported him. His back remained perfectly straight. Both sets of parents looked at him in confusion. No one knew who he was. He Ying's face instantly lost its color. Her hands began trembling beneath the table. She forced out an awkward smile. "Honey, who is this? I don't think you've ever mentioned him before." As she spoke, she secretly kept signaling to Kuishuji with her eyes. She was terrified. Terrified that everything would be exposed in front of both families. I ignored her completely. Instead, I looked directly at Kuishuji. "Director Kui, my wife claims that the year we got married, you took advantage of her after she got drunk. Is that true?" The entire room instantly fell silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. Sweat began forming on Kuishuji's forehead. He looked at me, then at He Ying, unable to answer. Cold sweat instantly covered Kuishuji's forehead. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Quietly, he slipped his phone from his pocket. Under the table, he quickly typed me a text message. "Brother Dung, should I tell the truth? Should I admit that she seduced me? Or should I take the blame and claim I assaulted her to help save your marriage?" He was being extremely careful. If he admitted to assault and someone secretly recorded his confession, his life would truly be over. But if he told the truth, he was terrified I'd send the videos to Li Xiaoyan. He couldn't figure out what I wanted. He was trapped. I didn't reply. Instead, I simply placed my phone on the table, right in front of He Ying. Then I smiled. "So, what do you think he should say? Why don't the two of you discuss your story first and decide how you'd like to continue this performance?" He Ying quickly wiped away her tears and forced herself to stay calm. "Mingliang, let's talk about this later. Our parents are all here. Can we please just have dinner first?" I ignored her completely. Instead, I looked directly at Kui Shujie. "Director Kui, do I look like a man who can't find a wife? Or was my wife simply impossible for you to resist?" I stared into his eyes. "Tell everyone the truth." Kui Shujie wiped the sweat from his forehead. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Back then, before your wedding, Hu Ying contacted me. She said she wanted one last moment of freedom before getting married. She was the one who seduced me. After she got married, she contacted me again. She said she wanted to find herself. That's why we continued seeing each other. No one forced her. Everything happened because she wanted it. The room exploded. "No!" He Ying screamed at the top of her lungs. She suddenly flipped the entire dining table over. Crash! Bowls, plates, and glasses shattered across the floor. She pointed at me with trembling fingers. "Dung Mingliang, why are you doing this to me? My parents are here. Why would you humiliate me like this? My father has heart problems. Are you trying to kill him?" Oil from the spilled dishes splashed onto my clothes. I calmly brushed it off. Then I looked toward Kui Shujie. "Director Kui, you said you know how to deal with women. Give her 2 slaps. Maybe it'll help her wake up." Without hesitation, Kui Shujie walked over. Smack! Smack! 2 loud slaps landed across He Ying's face. For 2 seconds, the entire house became completely silent. Then, everything exploded. My father-in-law rushed toward Kui Shujie. My mother-in-law followed behind him. The 3 of them immediately started struggling with each other. He Ying screamed hysterically, "Stop! Please stop!" After everyone finally pulled them apart, my father-in-law slowly turned toward He Ying. His entire body was trembling with rage. Without saying a word, he raised his hand. Smack! The slap echoed through the room. "You shameless girl!" He glared at her with bloodshot eyes. "I raised you for all these years, and this is what you've become?" He Ying covered her swollen face. She couldn't stop crying. Her father didn't look at her again. He turned around and walked straight toward the door. His steps were unsteady. He looked as if he had aged 10 years in a single moment. My mother-in-law looked at her daughter. She let out a long, exhausted sigh. Without saying anything, she hurried after her husband. I looked at He Ying one last time. "Pack your things and get out of my house." She slowly raised her head. Hatred filled her eyes. "Dung Mingliang, you're ruthless. I'll never forgive you." I didn't even bother answering. Seeing that I wouldn't react, she wiped away her tears and silently walked upstairs. A while later, she came back downstairs with her suitcase. As she walked toward the door, she noticed Kui Shuji kneeling on the floor, cleaning up the broken dishes and spilled food. She looked at him. Then she looked back at me. Her expression was incredibly complicated. Without another word, she slammed the front door behind her. Bang! She was gone. About 15 minutes later, the house finally became quiet. Only my parents and I remained. My mother couldn't stop cursing He Ying. Just a few minutes earlier, She had been defending her. Now, the more she thought about everything that had happened, the angrier she became. She kept talking about all the mistakes He Ying had made over the years. The more she spoke, the more furious she became. My father looked at me with concern. "Can you handle this?" I forced a smile. "If you're worried, just give me some money. That'll make me feel better." My father couldn't help smiling. "So you're still joking? I guess you'll be all right. I'll be fine. I'm upset, but I'm not going to ruin my life over someone like her." Both of my parents comforted me for a while. They reminded me to eat properly and get some rest. Only then did they leave. Less than 30 minutes later, my father's phone call came. His voice was filled with panic. "Mingliang, something happened! Your father-in-law collapsed! They've taken him to the hospital!" I rushed there immediately. By the time I arrived, he had already been taken into emergency surgery. My mother-in-law was crying nonstop. He Ying was crying even harder. My own mother stayed beside them, trying to comfort them. More than 2 hours later, the operating room doors finally opened. The doctor slowly walked out. The surgery was successful. We managed to save his life. But the situation isn't good. We don't know when he'll wake up. There's a very high chance he'll remain in a coma. The moment she heard those words, He Ying completely lost control. She pointed at me and screamed hysterically, "It's all your fault! You're the reason my father is like this!" Several nurses quickly came over and warned her to calm down. I didn't argue with her. Instead, I quietly helped arrange the hospital admission procedures. After everything was settled, I left with my parents. The next day, I had my lawyer deliver the divorce agreement directly to the hospital. Later, the lawyer called me. He Ying's emotional state is unstable. As soon as she saw the agreement, she tore it into pieces. Then she cursed at everyone. 3 days later, Cui Shujie called me. He Ying came looking for me. She demanded that I divorce my wife. She wants me to take responsibility for her. He sighed heavily. "Brother Deng, please help me. Talk to her. I'll pay you more money. Just convince her not to bother me." Before he could finish speaking, I hung up. Help him? Not a chance. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about Kui Shuji at all. I was thinking about something much more valuable. The videos in my possession. How much would they be worth to Li Xiaoyan? 3 days later, I walked out of my office building after work. As I reached the parking lot, I saw my mother-in-law waiting for me. In just a few days, she seemed to have aged 10 years. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hair had turned noticeably grayer. It was obvious she hadn't been sleeping. She slowly walked over to me. "Mingliang, do you really have to divorce Xiaoyang?" I looked at her calmly. "Do I have another choice? Should I stay married and let her betray me again?" She sighed deeply. "I know she made a terrible mistake. But these days, so many couples experience affairs. Many of them still choose to stay together." I shook my head. "Let me explain something. Most couples who choose to stay together do it because they have children. The innocent spouse sacrifices everything, so their child can grow up in a complete family. But my situation is different. The child isn't mine, so why should I sacrifice the rest of my life?" She lowered her head. "You watched that child grow up? Your parents loved the child too." "Can you really let go?" I answered without hesitation. I truly loved that child. But the day I found out the truth, everything changed. Blood ties are impossible to explain. But I know one thing. I can let go. My parents can too. The moment I called her auntie instead of mom, her face became even paler. After a long silence, she spoke again. "You know, Xiaoyang doesn't earn much. The child has school, private lessons, living expenses. Your father-in-law still hasn't woken up. My retirement pension barely covers his hospital bills. If you divorce her, how will she survive?" I couldn't help laughing. Should I be responsible for her life? Then I continued, "And tell He Ying something for me. I've already calculated every dollar I spent raising that child. I don't even want the extra change. But the $68,000 I spent, she'll repay every cent." My mother-in-law's expression immediately darkened. "Mingliang, you are husband and wife. Do you really have to be this heartless? If this goes to court, I won't let Xiaoyang leave with nothing. You keep saying she cheated. But words alone aren't enough. You need real evidence. If you can't prove it, the court won't believe you." I looked at her quietly. Then I took out my phone. "I'd like to show you something." I opened one of the videos. As soon as the screen lit up, she immediately turned her head away. Her face turned bright red with shame. She wished she could disappear. I calmly said, 3 months ago, when I first became suspicious, I installed hidden cameras in my house. I have many more videos just like this. Would you like to watch the rest?" She stood there in complete silence. Not another word came out of her mouth. A few seconds later, she lowered her head, turned around, and slowly walked away. The very next day, Hee Ying came to see me. This time, the arrogance she once had was completely gone. She had finally figured out why Kui Shuji was so terrified of me. The moment she sat down, she looked at me and said quietly, "I'll agree to the divorce. I'll leave with nothing. But I have one condition. You have to give me every video you have." I looked at her calmly. "What makes you think you're in a position to negotiate with me?" She bit her lip. "If you keep those videos, you'll use them to threaten Kui Shuji. He'll have to support me for the rest of my life." I shook my head. "Sorry, I'm a man who keeps his word. I don't intend to blackmail anyone." Her expression suddenly became angry. "Dung Mingliang! You just can't stand seeing me happy, can you?" I looked directly into her eyes. "A long time ago, I wanted you to become the happiest woman in the world. But now, I hope you become the most miserable." She stood up abruptly. "Don't think I can't survive without you. Even if you have those videos, as long as our child exists, Kui Shuji will have to give me money. As for the divorce, you can take your time suing me." After saying that, she stormed out of my office. The door slammed shut behind her. I watched her leave. Then I slowly made another decision. There was one more thing I needed to do. It was risky, like a double-edged sword. But I knew Hee Ying wouldn't stop making trouble. Instead of waiting for her to make the first move, I'd strike first. That afternoon, I returned to Jingyu Media Group. But this time, I wasn't there to see Kui Shuji. I asked to meet Li Xiaoyan, the wealthy heiress of the Li family. The moment she heard that I possessed one of Kui Shuji's biggest secrets, she agreed to see me. A few minutes later, I stepped into her office. This was the first time I'd ever met her in person. I'd heard plenty of stories about her before. Now I finally understood why everyone respected her. Even the most expensive designer clothes couldn't hide her ordinary appearance, but none of that mattered. The aura she carried was overwhelming. She sat quietly behind her desk. Without raising her voice, she naturally commanded the entire room. She looked at me calmly. "So, you claim you know one of Shuji's secrets. What exactly do you want in return?" I smiled politely. "I didn't come here to make demands. I simply don't think someone like President Li deserves to be kept in the dark. Compared to her, I was just an operations director at another company. Our positions weren't even close. The evidence I held could force Kui Shuji to compensate me. But threatening Li Xiaoyan? That would be asking for disaster. Greed destroys people. Destroying Kui Shuji was enough. I quietly placed a USB drive on her desk. Whether this ever becomes public is entirely up to you." Without changing her expression, she plugged the drive into her computer. She played one of the videos. After only a few seconds, she paused it. Then she looked back at me. "Kui Shuji has a grudge against you?" I nodded. "The woman in the video is my wife." She closed the laptop. "What kind of compensation are you expecting? I've already recovered the financial losses caused by Kui Shuji. I don't want anything else." She smiled slightly. "So, you're Dung Mingliang, the operations director of Wenyao Culture Group." I nodded politely. "I don't deserve such praise." She folded her hands on the desk. "Our company will soon be discussing a major partnership with your group. I'll arrange for you to be the person in charge. As for how much benefit you can gain from that opportunity, that depends entirely on your own ability." I smiled. "Thank you, President Li." After exchanging a few polite words, I stood up and left her office. After I left, Li Xiaoyan couldn't wait any longer. She immediately plugged the USB drive back into her computer. She started playing the videos one after another. The further she watched, the colder her expression became. Suddenly, she grabbed the glass on her desk and smashed it onto the floor. "Crash! Dung Mingliang! You bastard!" The videos hadn't been arranged randomly. I had deliberately placed them in a specific order. The first video showed Kui Shuji secretly bringing Hee Ying into Li Xiaoyan's own house. As she continued watching, the next videos became even more shocking. This time, the woman in the video wasn't Hee Ying anymore. It was Li Xiaoyan herself, and the man beside her wasn't Kui Shuji. I knew exactly how wealthy families operated. Even if Kui Shuji had an affair, the Li family might simply give him a warning. After all, what mattered most to them was protecting the family's reputation and interests. But things changed the moment those videos existed. As long as I possessed them, Li Xiaoyan could never completely trust Kui Shuji again. To protect herself, she would eventually have to weaken his position within the company. And when the day came that Kui Shuji was no longer useful, he would become completely disposable. At the same time, she might eventually see me as a threat as well. That's why I never intended to use those videos for money. I only wanted one thing. As long as Li Xiaoyan didn't target me, those videos would never appear online. I believed she understood my message perfectly. 3 days later, a shocking piece of news exploded across the city. Kui Shuji, the husband of Li family heiress Li Xiaoyan, had been arrested. According to the reports, He was accused of embezzling company funds involving a huge amount of money. As the investigation continued, authorities uncovered multiple financial crimes connected to him. In simple terms, every illegal transaction, every hidden debt, every dirty secret inside the company was placed on Kuishuji's shoulders. That was how wealthy families protected themselves. When they chose a live-in son-in-law, ability wasn't the only requirement. More importantly, he had to be someone with weaknesses, someone with people he wanted to protect, someone willing to sacrifice himself if necessary. Kuishuji fit that role perfectly. He accepted every accusation. Because as long as he carried the blame, the people he cared about could continue living comfortably. When Hee Ying heard the news, she completely panicked. She had believed that even without my videos, she could simply pressure Kuishuji into supporting her financially. She thought he would stay quiet to avoid exposing the affair. Instead, he was already behind bars. Her final lifeline had completely disappeared. 7 days after Kuishuji was arrested, Hee Ying came to see me again. By then, the court had already contacted her. She had officially received the divorce summons. She was wearing the same white dress, with the same ponytail hairstyle, that she had worn on our very first date. Back then, seeing her dressed like that had made my heart race. Now, it only made me feel disgusted. She stood quietly in front of me. Her eyes were red from crying. Mingliang, I really know I was wrong. I was blinded by his sweet words. For the past few weeks, I haven't slept through a single night. Can we please try again? I don't want this divorce. I looked at her calmly. You don't want a divorce? I shook my head. No. You don't want to lose your husband. You lost every person you could rely on. Cui Shujie is gone. Your future disappeared. So now, you suddenly remembered that I'm still here. You don't miss me. You miss having someone to support you. She lowered her head. Tears rolled down her face again. This time, they looked more genuine than ever before. After a long silence, she quietly spoke. If we really have to divorce, then at least divide some of the property. I still need money to live. I couldn't help laughing. Am I your father? Why should I be responsible for your life? Even during a marriage, one spouse isn't supposed to carry the other forever. A healthy marriage is built by two independent people. Each person contributes. Each person helps the other become better. I looked directly into her eyes. Before, I said you didn't help with the family's finances, and you didn't provide emotional support. Honestly, I was giving you too much credit. The only role you played in my life was dragging me backward. You keep talking about equality between men and women, but when it comes to responsibility, you only want the benefits. You refuse the obligations. Even if Kui Shujie had never appeared, our marriage still wouldn't have lasted. Her eyes instantly turned red with anger. So you're saying you were completely innocent? If you hadn't supported me all these years, would I have ended up with nothing? I spent my youth with you. You owe me compensation. I laughed. My youth isn't worth less than yours. You cheated on me while we were married. I only hope people who knowingly take advantage of others will one day face even harsher consequences. She opened her mouth to argue again. I raised my hand to stop her. Save it. We'll settle everything in court. The trial came not long afterward. Hee Ying never even appeared in court. The evidence I submitted was overwhelming. There was nothing left for her to deny. I later heard that the moment she received the court's final judgment, she suffered a complete mental breakdown. Not long afterward, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. As for me, a brand new chapter of my life had already begun. 1 month later, my parents started urging me to get married again. Because I had become the person responsible for working with Xingyu Media Group, my income increased dramatically. My career continued climbing higher. And naturally, more outstanding women began appearing in my life. For now, I had no intention of starting another relationship, but I believed, one day, I would meet the person who truly belonged with me. One afternoon, a coworker mentioned a tragic piece of news. An executive from another company had jumped to his death. The reason, an unhappy marriage. Years of living under constant pressure at home had finally broken him. Hearing that story, I couldn't help feeling fortunate. I had escaped my own miserable marriage before it destroyed me. Only then did I truly understand something. A family can never be supported by just one person. A successful marriage requires two people walking toward each other, not one person carrying all the weight, while the other only takes. Someday, I believe I'll meet the right woman, someone who is willing to build a home together, someone who gives as much as she receives. And when that day comes, we'll create a family that belongs to both of us, a family built on trust, respect, and genuine love. The end.